Most people like to believe they would never fall for someone who treats them poorly. It feels logical to assume that respect attracts respect, care attracts care, and love attracts love. Yet many women find themselves drawn to men who give them little time, little effort, and little regard. Instead of walking away, they hold on tighter. They wait for crumbs of attention. They hope for change. They replay the good moments in their mind while ignoring the coldness in front of them. This struggle is far more common than most admit, and it often starts long before the relationship itself. What makes this topic powerful is how personal it is. Every woman who has lived through it can describe the confusion. She remembers telling herself she deserved more, yet feeling unable to leave. She remembers the rush she felt when he finally texted back after ignoring her for days. She remembers the way hope hooked her, even when reality kept proving her wrong. These experiences are painful, but they are not signs of weakness. They are signs of deep emotional wiring that deserves compassion, not judgment. Understanding why this pattern forms is the first step in breaking it. The goal is not to blame women or excuse men who act careless. The goal is to shine light on the hidden psychological triggers that keep someone tied to a partner who treats them like an option. When we understand the forces at play, the cycle becomes easier to see, and even easier to escape. What follows are the first 3 sections that break down the roots of this attraction with clarity and honesty. 1. The psychology of inconsistent reward. A major reason women become attached to men who act distant is due to a psychological loop called intermittent reinforcement. This happens when positive attention appears rarely and unpredictably. Instead of weakening attraction, the inconsistency strengthens it. The brain becomes trained to chase the next high. Each short burst of affection feels intense because it is surrounded by long periods of silence or dismissal. The emotional contrast makes the small moments feel bigger than they are, and that contrast creates a powerful hook. This pattern mirrors how addictive behaviors form. When someone cannot predict when a reward will come, they invest more energy trying to earn it. They analyze every message, every pause, every reaction. They put in effort hoping it will pay off. Even when the reward is tiny, it feels meaningful because of the effort spent chasing it. The man's coldness creates the tension. His rare warmth becomes the release. Together, they create a cycle that feels impossible to walk away from. The danger is that the woman believes she is invested because she cares deeply, not realizing she is responding to a psychological trap. Her emotions feel real, and they are, but the fuel behind them is often the pattern rather than the person. She becomes attached to the possibility of what he could be, not who he consistently is. Once the cycle is in place, logic loses its grip. What remains is the craving for validation, and that craving can make even the smallest sign of attention feel like proof of love. 2. Childhood patterns and attachment history. Another powerful force behind this attraction lies in early attachment experiences. Childhood teaches people what love feels like, even when what they learn is unhealthy. If a girl grew up with unpredictable affection, emotional distance, or a parent who showed love only when it was convenient, she may grow into a woman who sees inconsistency as normal. She becomes familiar with working hard to earn approval. She becomes used to the idea that affection must be chased. Even if it is painful, it still feels familiar. Attachment wounds make people overlook red flags because the dynamic itself feels like home. The young woman who never felt fully seen may become the adult who feels pulled toward men who make her prove her worth. This is not a conscious decision. It is emotional memory replaying itself. When a man acts indifferent, it activates the same feelings she spent her childhood trying to fix. She may think she is trying to build a relationship, but emotionally, she is trying to heal an old wound by winning the affection of someone who resembles the source of that wound. The challenge is that familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar peace. A healthy man who communicates clearly might feel boring or too good to be true. A distant man feels more exciting because the emotional chase fits her old pattern. Until she recognizes this connection, she may continue choosing partners who reflect her past rather than partners who support her future. Healing her attachment history gives her the power to choose differently, but the first step is understanding why the pattern began. 3. Low self-worth and the search for validation. Women who struggle with self-worth often turn to relationships for confirmation that they matter. When a man acts cold or distant, his eventual approval feels like proof of value. The harder it is to get, the more meaningful it feels. This is why attention from an indifferent man can seem more powerful than attention from someone who gives it freely. She believes she has earned it. In reality, she has been starved of it. Her need for validation becomes the fuel that keeps her locked in. Low self-worth also changes the way she interprets bad behavior. Instead of seeing his distance as a sign of incompatibility, she sees it as a challenge. She tells herself that if she just tries harder, he will finally appreciate her. She believes that effort equals love. She believes that loyalty will fix the problem. These beliefs keep her from stepping back and evaluating whether the relationship supports her growth or destroys her confidence. She becomes invested in proving she is good enough. The tragedy is that the relationship becomes a mirror that reflects her deepest insecurities instead of her strengths. Every moment he pulls away confirms her fear that she is not worthy, and every moment he comes back gives her a temporary high that covers the pain. That emotional rollercoaster feels like passion, but it is actually a sign of unmet emotional needs. When a woman learns to build her worth from within, she stops relying on men who make her feel small. She begins choosing partners who match her value rather than partners who test it. 4. Society's reward system for male emotional distance. Modern culture often glamorizes emotionally distant men. Movies, music, and social media paint them as mysterious, confident, and desirable. Women grow up seeing the hard-to-get man framed as the prize, while the kind, attentive man gets labeled as desperate or boring. This messaging shapes expectations long before a real relationship begins. When a woman meets a man who acts indifferent, the culture around her has already told her that his behavior means he is valuable. She doesn't see distance as a warning sign. She sees it as something she's supposed to earn. This cultural script makes emotional unavailability look like power. Men who act detached appear strong. Men who ignore calls or provide minimal effort are described as independent. Women often internalize the idea that securing love from a man who doesn't give it easily is a form of achievement. It becomes a status symbol. If she can win over the guy who doesn't chase anyone, she feels like she has proven something. This transforms the relationship from a partnership into a competition she feels she must win. The problem is that culture never shows the reality behind these dynamics. It doesn't show the nights she waits for him to respond. It doesn't show the anxiety she hides from her friends. It doesn't show the emotional drain of trying to convince someone to treat her with care. Society praises the chase but ignores the bruises it leaves behind. When women learn to challenge those cultural messages, they stop confusing emotional distance with value. They begin to recognize that real strength comes from emotional presence, not emotional absence. 5. The illusion of potential and the hope for change. A powerful part of the emotional bond with a distant man comes from the idea of what he could be. Women often fall in love with potential. They imagine the relationship once he heals, once he opens up, once he sees her value. This hope becomes a strong emotional anchor. Even if the present is disappointing, the future she imagines is beautiful enough to keep her trying. She believes that if she stays long enough, loves hard enough, and remains patient enough, he will eventually transform into the partner she needs. This illusion of potential becomes even stronger when he shows rare moments of vulnerability. When he finally talks about his past or lets his guard down, it feels meaningful. These small moments become proof to her that he is capable of more. She treats those 10 minutes of softness as evidence that her effort is working. The problem is that these moments are often temporary. They are not signs of real change. They are emotional spikes that reinforce her attachment. She mistakes brief breakthroughs for long-term growth. Hope becomes both her strength and her trap. Hope keeps her loving, but it also keeps her stuck. She does not want to quit, because quitting feels like giving up on a dream she invested deeply in. What she forgets is that relationships grow through consistency, not potential. A man's future self cannot make up for his present behavior. When women recognize the difference between who a man is and who they wish he would become, they stop chasing imaginary versions and start honoring their real needs. 6. Emotional trauma bonds. When cycles of affection and rejection repeat long enough, a trauma bond can form. This bond is a psychological connection built through emotional highs and lows. The pain pulls her in, the relief keeps her hooked. It feels like passion, but it is actually survival mode disguised as love. Each time he withdraws, her anxiety rises. Each time he returns, her body releases that stress, creating a rush of relief that feels like a deeper connection. It is not healthy chemistry. It is emotional conditioning. Trauma bonds strengthen because the relationship becomes unpredictable. She never knows what version of him she will get. Some days he is warm, other days he is cold. This inconsistency makes her hyper-focused on the relationship. She becomes more invested in fixing the problem than enjoying the partnership. She tries to behave perfectly. She monitors her words. She avoids conflict. She tells herself that if she does everything right, he won't pull away again. This effort gives her a sense of control, even though the situation is actually out of her hands. Over time, the trauma bond makes leaving feel impossible. She knows she is not happy. She knows she deserves more. But the fear of losing the moments of closeness becomes stronger than the pain of the distance. The bond doesn't feel rational. It feels emotional, chemical, and urgent. The good moments feel too rare to let go of, even though they are the very reason she feels trapped. Breaking a trauma bond requires support, self-awareness, and time, but once it breaks, she can finally see the relationship for what it was: a cycle, not a connection. 7. The thrill of the chase and the myth of winning him. Chasing someone who shows little interest can feel exciting in a way that stable relationships do not. The unpredictability creates an adrenaline rush. Every small sign of affection feels like a reward. That rush can easily be confused with chemistry. Many women mistake the intensity of the chase for genuine emotional connection, when in truth, it is their nervous system reacting to inconsistency. Instead of enjoying the relationship, they become focused on securing the next moment of approval, turning the entire dynamic into a pursuit rather than a partnership. This chase becomes even stronger because of the belief that winning him means something. If a man who gives no attention finally chooses her, she feels like she overcame a challenge. She believes she stood out among all the women he ignored. That imagined victory boosts her ego, even if the relationship itself brings little joy. She wants to believe she is the exception. She wants to believe that her love changed him. This makes her stay longer than she should, because leaving would mean admitting the chase was never worth it. The real issue is that the chase distracts her from the reality of the relationship. She becomes so focused on winning him over that she forgets to ask important questions. Does he treat her with respect? Does he add value to her life? Does she feel safe with him? The thrill overrides her logic. The chase becomes addictive because it promises validation but delivers disappointment. When she realizes that love should not feel like a competition, she stops chasing men who turn her emotional effort into a game. 8. Emotional scarcity and fear of being alone. Many women stay attached to distant men because the fear of being alone feels worse than the pain of staying. Loneliness can make anyone hold on to a relationship simply because it fills a void. Even if the relationship brings little comfort, it still feels better than silence. When a man occasionally shows attention, it gives her just enough connection to keep her hoping. She convinces herself that something is better than nothing, even when that something drains her emotionally. Emotional scarcity develops when someone has gone long periods without feeling valued, loved, or understood. The moment any man gives attention, no matter how minimal, it feels meaningful. She accepts bare minimum effort because her emotional tank is empty. She takes what she can get, even if what she gets is unhealthy. This scarcity mindset forms a dangerous cycle. The less love she receives, the more she clings to whatever she can find. Her fear of losing him becomes stronger than her desire for a healthy relationship. But scarcity is an illusion. It comes from past experiences, not from reality. Once she learns to meet her emotional needs through self-care, community, purpose, and boundaries, she begins to see relationships differently. She no longer accepts crumbs because she no longer feels starved. The fear of being alone fades when she builds a life that feels full on its own. At that point, a man who acts like she is nothing is no longer appealing. He becomes the obvious wrong choice, not a source of comfort. 9. The ego trap and the need to prove herself. When a man acts uninterested, many women take it personally. It becomes a hit to their ego. Instead of seeing his behavior as a reflection of his character, they see it as a reflection of their worth. This creates a strong urge to prove themselves. They want to show him that they deserve attention. They want to show him that he underestimated them. The relationship stops being about connection and becomes about convincing him to see their value. This ego trap grows deeper when he gives attention to other women or seems indifferent toward everyone. She sees it as a competition. She wants to be the one who breaks through his walls. She wants to be the one he finally chooses. But this desire is rooted in pride, not love. It turns emotional effort into a performance. She stops focusing on what she needs and instead focuses on how she looks in his eyes. The more he pulls away, the harder she tries, because quitting feels like failure. The real breakthrough comes when she recognizes that her worth does not rise or fall based on his behavior. A man's disinterest is not a challenge she must overcome. It is a message she must listen to. Healthy relationships never require someone to perform for validation. When she steps out of the ego trap, she stops tying her value to his approval. She stops chasing love she has to earn and starts choosing love that shows up consistently. 10. Breaking the cycle and reclaiming self-worth. Breaking the attachment to a man who treats a woman like she is nothing starts with awareness. She has to see the pattern for what it is, not what she hopes it will become. This means stepping back from the emotional roller coaster and looking at the relationship without the illusions of potential, the thrill of the chase, or the fear of being alone. She must ask hard questions. Does he show up consistently? Does he value her presence? Does he make her feel secure or anxious? Honest reflection is painful, but it creates the clarity she needs to begin healing. Once she sees the pattern clearly, the next step is rebuilding self-worth. This means learning to validate herself, instead of chasing validation from someone who withholds it. It means setting boundaries, not as punishment toward him, but as protection for her. It means filling her life with things that strengthen her identity outside of relationships, goals, friendships, passions, routines, and self-care practices that remind her she matters. A woman who feels whole does not cling to someone who makes her feel small. She can walk away because she knows she brings value wherever she goes. Finally, breaking the cycle requires choosing differently. Once she understands the emotional traps that kept her invested, she becomes stronger at recognizing red flags early. She stops mistaking distance for confidence, inconsistency for chemistry, and emotional chaos for passion. She learns to value steady affection over unpredictable attention. She chooses men who communicate, who show up, and who make her feel safe. The shift happens not because she changed men, but because she changed her standards. Conclusion: the attraction to emotionally distant men is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of deeper emotional wiring shaped by childhood experiences, social influences, unmet needs, and psychological conditioning. These patterns are powerful because they play on hopes, fears, and the desire to feel significant. Women do not fall for these men because they enjoy pain. They fall because the combination of inconsistency, scarcity, and validation triggers some of the strongest emotional responses the human brain can produce. What makes the cycle so painful is that the woman often believes the love is real. She believes the chase means something. She believes the rare moments of affection are proof of hidden depth. But over time she learns that real love does not make her feel invisible. Real love does not confuse her or drain her. Real love does not make her work for basic respect. Understanding why she became attached gives her the power to see the situation clearly and finally step out of the emotional fog. When she breaks free, she realizes something important. The problem was never that she wasn't enough. The problem was that she was trying to love someone incapable of showing up. Once she reclaims her worth, she stops settling for half love. She stops confusing emotional chaos with passion. She stops shrinking to fit a man who refuses to grow, and in doing so, she opens the door to relationships that feel calm, reciprocal, honest, and real. She stops chasing love and starts receiving it.